Oh, hey.
Welcome. Oh, hey. Welcome to the stream, everyone. It's
Hello,
Thursday,
everyone. It is.
which means it is Horror Story Club. If it's your first time here, welcome. We are working our way week by week, story by story, through the dark descent, an anthology of more than 50 horror short stories edited by David G. Hartwell. Welcome. We've got a Discord. We'll share the Discord links. It's a book club. It's on YouTube. The cool kids are doing it. The horror writers and readers are doing it. How you doing, Sarah?
Good. That was so succinct.
We're getting better. This is week
I
5.
love it. Yeah. This is great. This is great. I'm doing great. It's been a good day. The sun is setting here. It's getting earlier and earlier, which means that not only is summer going away, but we are getting more appropriately into horror season, and I'm here for it. So
That's what they call it. Spooky season, right? Around the
love
corner.
it. Yeah. It's coming up. So how about you?
I am great. This has been the part of the day I've been looking forward to. As you know, I try to reread these stories twice. So this is one of our longer ones.
I was about to say this was a long one.
This was a long one. So I didn't get all the way through my second read, but I had a bit of a hectic morning, but I had like 20 minutes before landing here to start rereading the story again. And I immediately was transported into the immersiveness of this piece, which I'm so excited to talk about because this was a yarn, a tale. I really felt transported. Each time I sat down with this story, I really felt like I disappeared into a book.
Yeah. Oh, it's interesting you say that. One of the points that I was going to make today when talking about the story as a whole was I felt like I read a full story. I felt like I read a novel. Like I feel like, oh, transported is such a good word because I got lost in this in the way that I haven't really gotten lost in our short stories before. And we've read some good ones. I mean, I know we're only like 5-10 episodes in, but we've read some bangers. But this one, I lost all track of time. I was actually swept away. And so I'm really excited to dive into this one with you today. I should say we're reading There's a Long Trail a Winding by Russell Kirk.
Yeah, we could identify what it is
we could about. I don't know. I was like, you know what, I should probably like mention what this week's story was. And each week, so we do Sci-Fi Story Club on Wednesdays, we do Horror Story Club on Thursdays, and I feel like every week there's just been a really interesting juxtaposition between the sci-fi story and the horror story. This week was no exception. Our sci-fi story this week was an extremely short, strange, meandering, philosophical, mathematical piece from the Big Book of Science Fiction called Elements of Pataphysics by Alfred Jarry. Today, our horror story is the opposite of pretty much all of that. Here in, as Asa said, The Dark Descent, edited by David G. Hartwell. So, a wonderful, beautiful, like, it's not even a spectrum. It's just two opposite polar ends of, I feel like, what we've read. So
I agree 100%. Deeply different reading experiences. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I know you loved, you mentioned multiple times like how much you loved this story. And should we jump into a recap? And then I just want to hear all your thoughts.
Yeah, let's jump into a recap. Yeah, just broader intro type stuff. Yeah, as Sarah said, we do a short story, sci-fi short story club on the together every Wednesday. We also do live writing on Fridays, like sprints, workshop, flash fiction type vibes. Tomorrow we're doing horror themed Christmas writing. So come through for that. We found an opportunity for 500 to 2,000 word short stories, horror Christmas themed. So that's going to be that. Just in the way of introductions, my name's Asa Merritt. I wrote 6 Sermons, which is an Audible original. It's a series. I'm on YouTube learning how to write fiction. My project on YouTube here is to get better at writing short fiction specifically, which is the impetus by reading these from a sort of craft writer forward perspective. Yes. Sarah, do you
Love
want to
it.
introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Sarah Ray Werner. I'm a writer and podcaster. I created Girl in Space, which is an audio fiction story. I also have a nonfiction podcast for writers called Right Now, like right now because puns. And yeah, and we're a few episodes in now to Story Club, and I'm just, I always tell writers that the best way they can improve their writing is by reading. And boy, I'm noticing that it's we're not even that far in and it's making a difference
Do you
for
feel
me.
do you feel like you started going to the gym again and you're
I
like,
do, but it's my brain and
I
the
know.
in
And
the
on the other
brain
side of
gym.
that though, it's like the amazing things we're going to be able to do.
Yeah, I'm just so anyway, this has been an unexpected delight in the year of 2025. So
Yes.
it's been great. So
Were you able to get some writing done today, Sarah, at all?
I was. I'm working on season 2 of Girl in Space, and I handwrite it. Often I hold up my papers. They're in a binder over there though today. And I really feel like reading this assortment of stories by these varied voices, because they've all been very different voices, has really helped me break out of a box that I think I had put myself in. I'd been thinking too narrow, I'd been thinking too small. And so I really appreciate all of these stories, as cliche as it sounds, for broadening my scope. I mean, how about you? Have you noticed a difference in your own writing?
I think it's just giving me permission to write what I want.
Mm.
Just this idea. There's just so many voices that we have to learn to silence. It's just I just feel like
Oh.
the journey of art making is just like whack-a-mole of voices that you have to silence. Like, oh, I'm not good enough. Like, oh, I am good enough. Like, oh, this won't sell. Like, who cares about it selling? And I just think that the breadth that we've experienced with these short stories has been really served as like an invitation to like what is possible with the written word is vast. And so like just pursue your own vision, right? That which is how lovely is that?
It's
What a
beautiful.
great feeling.
I love it. I
So
love it.
should we dig in?
I think we should dig in. I am, again, very stoked.
Yes,
Now,
welcome to the stream, everybody.
yes, welcome.
There's
Hello.
there's a long trail of winding by Russell Kirk. Sarah, what's the tell your friend at the bar version
Oh
of this
my
tale?
gosh. Well, it's one of those things where I could tell you like the story and you'd be like, oh, whatever. But like, you have to read this one. I believe in our Discord, and we'll link to that in just a little bit here. There is a link to, you can read the story for free if you don't have this anthology. So it is accessible to you. I do encourage you to read it. But basically, it starts off on a dark and stormy night. Our storm is a blizzard. And it reminded me a little bit of the beginning of one of the first stories we read, The Reach, which is also about a blizzard. But this one ends up being less about the blizzard and more about the destination. So Frank Sarsfield is our main character. And he's a 60-year-old man. And I think at one point it says he's as big as a bear. He looks like a Viking. He looks like a bear. He's this huge 60-year-old dude, which you don't usually see horror stories about. You usually see horror stories about like the frail, breakable people. So I thought that was a choice thing. Sorry, I will go on with the short version of the story.
I love that. Love that point. That's a good point.
But we're following Frank as he sort of, as he's walking, as he's going through the story, he's kind of telling us his life story a little bit about how he calls himself a bum. He calls himself at one point a hobo extraordinary, he calls himself, which I loved that phrase. And basically, he doesn't really see fit to do, paid jobs, so he wanders and he borrows and he does odd jobs and he cuts lumber. Anyway, he's walking, he comes across a town and he's like, it's freezing, I'm about to die. Uh, you know, Survival is the stake here. And so I'm going to find somewhere warm. He finds this house. He goes inside the house and he feels like he's been there before. And as he walks through the house, he seems to know where everything is. It is at one point told to us that Frank has a photographic memory. And so it is extra odd that he feels like he's been here before. And as we go through the story, we realize that Frank has been in this house before. And it's such a masterful unfolding of events on top of events. There's no time travel specifically, But what we're seeing is Frank reliving a journey that he took. And I guess we can talk about spoilers because we're going to talk about him anyway, and eventually led to his death. So you learn that this whole time he has been dead, and the story has some really interesting, tasty, overt religious overtones. And it's probably a little open to interpretation as to what exactly, like, literally is happening. I interpreted it as Frank walking through purgatory and reliving the moments up until the moment when he did something extraordinary. And I think, should I leave it at that? Is there anything else that I should bring in the summary?
I'm already feeling so much clarification, because I hadn't landed on such kind of a fine point. My instinct is that your reading of this is totally correct. I think that's a great interpretation. I think we maybe mention what the sort of what it is that happened.
Well, do you want to walk us through that, or do you want me to?
I think you're doing great.
Okay. So yeah, basically Frank gets in this house and he's really entranced by all of these. There's pictures, family pictures everywhere of mother, father, grandfather, whom the town is named after. It's called Anthonyville. And 3 little girls, Edith, I'm not going to remember the third one's name, Alice, Allegra, and Edith are the 3 girls. And he feels he's drawn, he doesn't know why, he's drawn to the middle child, the 7-year-old Allegra. And he goes up to the very highest point in the house, which there's just, it's just so rich in, this is such a rich allegory. But he talks about like ascending and, going up into the room. And there's a room at the very top of the house. Sorry, I'm all excited. It's called Frank's room. And so he's like, oh, another Frank must have lived here at some point. And it's like, oh, honey, it's you. But Frank is, it sort of reminded me of, and I believe this came second, so it may be loosely based on Of Mice and Men. If you've read that by John Steinbeck, there is a gentle giant character who is portrayed as having like a child's mind and is very, very peaceful, but also underneath the surface is capable of great violence. And how this character and the character in Of Mice and Men use that strength is, I think, also worth a discussion at some point. Maybe not today. But anyway, Frank's walking through this house and sort of reliving some moments. And he also, as he's having dinner, he finds the pantry, he lights a fire. I was at first thinking about like Beauty and the Beast, where Belle goes in to this like beautiful mansion. I was like, oh no, this is a track. This is a trick. This is a haunted house. Everything's going to go crazy. But it's not that. So Frank is revisiting a house in which he was essentially a servant or a helping hand. And he bonded with the family. And during his life, especially bonded with Allegra, the 7-year-old girl. And the grandfather, after whom the town is named, was the architect of the local prison where Frank had spent some time. Frank got out on parole, and as he's eating one of his meals, he's talking about how he got out on parole, and it was by this doctor from Vienna who said, Frank is a gentle spirit. Our prisons are overcrowded. Let Frank out. He's not going to hurt anyone. He's capable of great violence, but he is very specifically non-violent because he lives in guilt. And it's this whole thing. There's layers going on here. And so Frank remembers his parole officer's like thing where it talks about his own psychology and how religious he is. And then he finds a letter that Allegra wrote when she was an old woman later on. And this is where things started to get weird for me, because we get the feeling that Allegra is going to be a creepy haunted child thing in this house, like the creepy 7-year-old. But ostensibly, the note he finds is written by an elderly Allegra. And so that kind of threw me for a loop. But she starts recounting these events that led up to January 14th. Am I going to remember the year? January 14th, 1915. So the story begins January 12th. Frank says his birthday is January 14th. And He stays in this house for 2 days. On the final day, January 14th, which is also the day that the grandfather died who architected the prison. Oh, this is going all over the place, but I mean, I think it needs to. What happened was there was a prison break, and they set fire to the prison. The inmates, who it is very specifically pointed out, specifically had it in for the grandfather who had architected the prison. And it was weird because he architected the prison for no money. Like, he did it for free, and I don't know what that was trying to say, but we'll get to that maybe in a little bit. So yeah, prison break, they storm the house, and as Frank is going through, he's like, oh, that's weird, there's a hole in the door. Well, that was where the prisoners had used axes to chop them their way into the house. And it goes into this really horrifying, it was very upsetting to me. For me, like, everybody has a different genre of horror that gets them, that grates them the wrong way. For me, it's home invasion horror. And like, this mother and the three girls, Alice, Allegra, and Edith, it talks about these prisoners storming the house and like pouring like boiling oil on these little girls, and like they're doing stuff to the mom, and it's super upsetting. And Frank is upstairs. He wakes up. He comes downstairs when Allegra starts screaming. She begs him to help, and he goes downstairs and goes into what the story has been alluding to all along, is this berserker rage that Frank has in his heart. And Frank picks up an axe, and he axe murders all of the prisoners. Spoiler. But he does it in a way that is so, what's the word, righteous maybe? There's something in here that is really powerful. And the story is very religious. It starts off with a Bible verse from Luke. It would be better for him that a millstone were hanged around his neck and he cast into the sea than that he should offend one of these little ones. And really what we're seeing is, you know, Frank is an instrument for some pretty violent justice in this story, as he struggles with his own guilt, as he struggles with, he thinks he's going to hell. He thinks he's a horrible person. He's waiting for the day when he can do something that will redeem him. He did it. You know, it turns out he's already done it, but he's reliving this memory, hoping for a moment when he'll be good enough. Okay, I'm going to stop talking.
This is
what
so
are your
clarifying.
thoughts?
Okay. So what to finish out all the like what literally happened thoughts? What happens to the little girls and the mom?
So it's really, really upsetting. Oh, and the other thing is that the prisoners recognize him, and for a moment, like when they're in the house like torturing these girls and the mom, the prisoners recognize Frank, and for a minute, a bare minute, you think he's going to side with the prisoners because they know him, but he doesn't. And Frank has this line, all heads off but mine, that he yells. Sorry. I think that with the way that the story ends, it sort of fades out. Frank gets shot twice with a shotgun. And this is after all the axe murdering, or during the axe murdering, and he dies, and he's turning around to see if the mother and the three girls are okay, and he doesn't see them because his vision is fading back because he's dying in this version of events. So I don't know if maybe
he went to look for him, right?
He went to look for him, right? And he calls Allegra, speak to your Frank. They're not in the bedrooms. They're not anywhere. He goes outside. The bodies are gone. Oh, this sentence. The splashes and ropey strands of blood all were gone. Everything stood in perfect order, as if violence had never touched Tamarack House. And I think the gist is maybe that he died before knowing if they were okay.
Got it.
At least that's what I took away. But I do want to say at least Allegra, at the very least, survived, because we have a letter from her to her great granddaughter Celia. What's her name?
Additionally, we have the boulder.
Yes, we do. Okay, can you there's two boulders when Frank comes into this little town.
There's two boulders.
There's two boulders. Do you want to talk about the boulders since I've been like just gabbing?
Yeah, your mind though has so clearly perceived the story points here. I'm almost just kind of like, okay, keep explaining.
I could also do that, but I also
just
I
per the boulder. Yeah, I'll just contribute this because this is something that I understood. Is that yes, we know that they survived because there's a boulder for Frank, the protagonist, who presumably saved the girl, saved the mom, in loving memory of Frank, a spirit in prison made for eternity, who saved us and died for us. January 14th, 1915. So yes, us. I think everybody lives. I think everybody lives.
I think you're right, and I like to think that. I mean, initially you're not sure because Allegra never finishes her letter.
Right.
The letter remains unsent, which she was elderly when she was writing it. I think she passed away before she could send it to her daughter, her granddaughter, who would inherit the house. Darling Celia, she calls her. But oh my gosh,
Takashi, I want to get to your
Yes.
comments. Thanks for weighing
Yes.
in, Takashi Yi 88. If there's anyone else in the comments that you have thoughts, like please share them. We'd love to hear them. Before getting to that, oh shoot, I lost my thought.
Takashi's comments. We're talking about the boulders.
The boulders. It'll come back to me.
Okay.
Oh man, it'll come back to me. All right, let's go to Takashi. Takashi says,
Yes.
Frank reminded me of the Green Miles giant convict. Was this a reference you know, Sarah?
Yes. And I want to say that character, John Coffey, is maybe also based off of, I mentioned of Mice and Men earlier. Lenny, is that the name? I don't remember the name of Mice and Men. Is it Lenny? Okay.
It's either, yes, I think so.
Okay. John Coffey is sort of a similar character. He's steadfast. He's a black man in the prison system, and yeah, it's a powerful story about rage and justice, written by Stephen King in serial installments. You can buy the little, I think there's 6 of them.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, you can read it in little miniature serialized books if you want to. But yeah, Takashi, that's a great observation. It's these like gentle giants that are capable of great violence and great wrath.
Yes. Okay. Takashi has more to say. My thought came back to me.
Oh, good. Okay.
In the macro, like you have this clear interpretation, which I think really is true, of he's in purgatory perhaps and like sort of reliving these final moments that definitely happened. When I read the letter, I thought that this was way of a muddier situation. That like it might not literally be him. It could be kind of like an alternate version of him that like screwed up. It could be like it was a much less concrete, this is the life he lived and now he's seeing it. There's more of like this is a past self or something like that, because the letter it wasn't whole and didn't tie up in the way some of these other story elements did.
So you mean Allegra's letter and not his letter to his sister Mary?
Allegra's letter, yeah.
Okay,
and just the fact that it was like unfinished on the desk.
Yeah, that was very strange. And like she's like, oh, and then I'll tell you the rest later because I'm tired.
Yes.
And it's like, come on.
Yeah,
come on,
I know.
Allegra.
You're not
Lift
that
us
tired.
off.
Yeah. All right, Takashi, the beauty of this story, or at least what I can abstract from it, is on the atmosphere. The setting was essential for the theme of the story, the resistance of memory and guilt. Okay.
You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of a Silent Hill video game structure. I am so sorry to I don't know if I'm sorry to bring this up or not, but there's a video game franchise called Silent Hill where basically your main character in all of the games is thrust into a purgatory-like setting where they have to battle their own demons and have to relive some of their worst moments. Yeah, Silent Hill 2 especially. And I don't know. They made a terrible movie, or at least I think it was terrible, where it looks like snow, but it's actually ashes. So maybe it's the snow and the blizzard that got me thinking along those lines. But I really think that those Silent Hill video games were inspired, if not by this directly, then by this sort of genre of horror story.
Right. Lord Huntress says the religious overtures reminds me a bit of the big man protecting the girl in Between Two Fires and how it affects his soul.
I haven't read that one.
Me neither.
Between Two Fires. I'm gonna look it up real quick.
It sounds familiar. Yeah, I was so as you know, Sarah, I saved the intros until afterwards.
Yes.
Are you a read? Are you?
I read them beforehand. Yeah.
You read it beforehand. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I like to go in cold to like really try to like see what it does to me and then learn more about it later. What did you think of what we learned? Well, first of all, what are the big takeaways here of the intro to this story?
Yeah. It really hammers home that Russell Kirk is what David G. Hartwell calls the C.S. Lewis of the supernatural. And I mean, Narnia is kind of already a little supernatural, but I think he means more in a horror sense. Russell Kirk was very religious. Apparently, he was friends with T.S. Eliot, who was also extremely religious. And yeah, also, this was the winner of the World Fantasy Award in 1977, which it very well deserved. But what about you? Like, was it different reading? Well, okay, first of all, did you get anything specifically other than Russell Kirk was very, very religious from the intro? And if so, how did it affect your reading?
Just the sense of like, and I don't mean this pejoratively, just like agenda. Agenda. Like it's very clear that this is a religious writer. We start with Luke. There's constant little references to scripture. It's very clear that the writer of this story thinks in a Christian worldview that their experience of literature is deeply informed by that. But I guess with the intro, like per C.S. Lewis as well, these writers they were Christian writers in the sense, I think, my understanding of it is that they used fiction to advance Christian ideology or theology. And so there was a little bit of a like kind of the sort of arrow on the compass like moved a little bit for me. Like it was already kind of heading towards north. If north is like Christianity, and then like true north or whatever maybe is like it went even more there because it's like, oh, this person is like and it said in the intro that he's he's probably dead at this point, but was a conservative thinker. So this is someone kind of with an idea forward drip agenda or
Absolutely. Maybe somebody who comes up with the themes before they go in to start writing the story, right?
Lion, Jesus.
Yes.
One of those types. Yeah.
Yes. And I think it's interesting too that a lot of this, if you are not a religious person yourself, like he talks about at one point he uses the abbreviation RC, and like if you're not like super into like the church scene, you're not going to know that means Roman Catholic. Like it reminds me of like when Joe Walton writes, she uses SF, and I'm like, what is SF? Oh, it's science fiction. Like it's just it's something that if you're really deep into something, you're going to use an acronym that not everybody might be familiar with. And so I even thought stuff like that was interesting.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
I don't know. I think that I know that in our Discord, everybody's working on like their own really different cool stuff. And we were talking a little bit earlier this week about religious extremism and writing religious horror. And there were some folks in the Discord who were like, can that even be done? And it's like, yes, it can be done very effectively. I mean, do you see this primarily as a religious horror story, or tell me a little bit more about?
Yeah, well, that's where I was thinking the ways in which the intro made me kind of reevaluate it. And the way that the editor presents it is that this is allegory. Like it seems like this is something that's, let's just read it. Is one of Kirk's later works. It epitomizes the overtly allegorical mode in contemporary horror. Stories written as allegory as opposed to stories, such as much of the works of Stephen King that may be interpreted using the moral coordinates of the allegorical method. So when I read it, I didn't feel it as allegory. It felt to me this creepy, weird story about this guy that has like traumas or maybe killed somebody or maybe like wants to kill somebody. and we're in this like cool old house, and that's the vibe, and it's rich with biblical reference and sort of laden with that texture. But I didn't see this as like an allegory. Like, what is the allegory, I guess?
Well, that's a very good question. And the allegory that I'm used to seeing is, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's been 20 plus years since I went to college and talked about things like allegory. In an allegory, something stands in place of something else, and there's contrasting themes like light and dark, good and evil. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is a very, very, very good example of this. The lion, Aslan, is Jesus. The children are, followers / disciples. The White Witch is Satan. And in this case, I don't know if it's that outright. And I wonder if it says this is an overt allegory. And I struggle with that a little bit because I think it's a story that stands on its own. I know he's contrasting it with stories by like Stephen King, which he says stand as stories and aren't first and foremost allegories, but I think this story stands on its own.
I don't know if that's mutually exclusive. I think I think by overt allegory just means like it's clearly allegorical.
Oh, okay.
Not that it can't function as not allegory, but I still don't even know. I still don't even know what that overt allegory is. Okay, like the cupola on your way to heaven. Maybe that's the purgatory, that this house is purgatory, this blizzard where you can't see where you're going, you're trying to find a way. Maybe that's the core allegory, is that this is purgatory. You have to pass through purgatory to escape the next phase.
Well, the thing too is that ostensibly, Allegra says in her letter that this happens every year. And ostensibly, Frank does this every year and never moves out of purgatory.
Wait, say that again?
Yeah, in her letter. So I'm looking.
This is Allegra's letter.
Yep, Allegra's letter on page, I want to say 75. She's talking about, I can't wait until you inherit this house. You just have to sort of ignore the fact that, here you go. Tamarack House is not at all frightening.
Yeah.
Except a little in the morning every January 14th.
Yeah, I got okay, let's see, it's not coming into focus.
Oh no.
Three exclamation points. Yeah, I got my little 3 exclamation points on that line.
Yeah. And so Allegra's talking about what I assumed, and again, I'm not going to assume that my interpretation is correct, but what I got from this is that Frank comes back 2 years before his death every year and relives his own personal attempt to get out of purgatory and never accepts the grace of God and doesn't give up his guilt. He carries his guilt, and he's always carried his guilt. He had guilt as a child. His mother died and he had run away from home, so he didn't know his mother died. He prays for her every night. He counts the days from her death. It is, I'm not going to find where that was in the story, but like he knows down to the day, like, it's been, 40 years, 3 months and 17 days since my mother died. He is a guilt-ridden man, and he will not let go of his guilt. He will not see that he can escape this purgatory. And maybe he can escape the purgatory. And maybe there's something there too about, ending it all in a blood-soaked rage and not being allowed to move on. So I maybe wasn't sure if Frank was unable or not allowed to move on, but he's certainly stuck. At least that's how I read it.
Okay, that's super helpful, right? That's such a great reminder that this happens every year. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, right. So this is the weeds a little bit, but if you're a Protestant, presumably grace is always available to you, Is that different if you're a Catholic? Like, is that the allegory here? That's like, look, if you just decided to murder a bunch of people, it doesn't matter. You're never going to the good place.
Well, he has some conversations in his memory, and this is not a case of unreliable narrator, because we are told several times that Frank has a photographic memory. Frank remembers literally everything. So we can trust that he remembers things verbatim. And he's talking with Father, he is friends with
Oh yeah,
a
it's
priest, Father O'Malley.
O'Malley.
Yeah. And he says, okay, I'm just going to read this to you. It's the bottom of page 72.
Okay.
And this is a letter. So Frank is writing a letter to his sister who's 4 years younger than he is. Her name is Mary, like the most Catholic of Catholic names. He says, by the way, Mary, once upon a time, Father O'Malley, the priest, told me that to the Lord, all time is eternally present. I think this means everything that happens in the world in any day goes on all at once. So God sees what went on in this house long ago and what's going on in this house today all at the same time. It's just as well we don't see through God's eyes, because then we'd know everything that's going to happen to us. And because I'm such a sinner, I don't want to know. Father O'Malley says that God may forgive me everything and have something special in store for me, but I don't think so, because why would he? Why should he? And Father O'Malley says, I'm almost done here. Father O'Malley says that maybe some people work out their purgatory here on earth, and I might be one of these. He says we are spirits in the prison house of the body, which is like we're serving time in the world here below, and maybe God forgave me long ago, and I'm just waiting my time and paying for what I did, and it will be all right in the end. I have so many stars around this section.
Takashi, your scene, by the way, there's a lot.
Yes.
Just I'm gonna share this. Takashi thinks that I believe it has more to do with the author's worldview rather than a specific allegory.
I think so too, Takashi. Yes, it is. Yeah.
I think this. Okay, I think that this is also the kind of story where the writer is going to kind of tell you how to think about it. Like they are going to be like, this is the thing, this is important. And so I'm glad you read that, because I think this is the kind of story where we're supposed to take this at face value.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like to me.
And maybe that's why it's an overt allegory. It's because you're not supposed to question the logistics of how all time exists at the same time. That's not what's important. What's important is Frank's spiritual journey.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So it's a really cool, it's funny because I don't even know what question to ask of this story. I guess it's kind of like, if we take it, let's take it outside of allegory.
Okay. Maybe just that's as a story.
Because that's actually because I didn't get the allegory at first, and I'm sitting here finding it, and I'm grateful to kind of have a better sense of it. But if we just take it as something that happens to this person, and what's the emotional experience caused by that,
it also works. I could not put this story down. I feel like allegory can often be very heavy-handed or obtuse. Not so with this story. I was, like you said at the very beginning of our conversation, I was drawn in. I was sucked into this story because it works so well just as a narrative. It's a powerful story.
And I have my own answers for that. For you, why does it work so well? Or what is it that was working so well?
I think what worked very well for me was how we are placed into Frank's mind in a way. And this author, Russell Kirk, was so skilled, in my opinion, at there's probably a way to do this poorly, to let us in to the mind of someone who is maybe a little bit more described as simple-minded, described as just unemployable, a person who is living in fear and guilt. There would be a way to do that would be the opposite of this way. So this way really lets us into who Frank is and really sets us up to empathize with his journey. I remember just going through this story and feeling like I was living through Frank, and that a lot of the revelations that Frank has and a lot of the doubts that Frank has, I feel are, universal, because we all carry guilt. We all carry doubt. we all carry a lot of this. And Frank's felt so authentic and honest, and I was able to connect with him emotionally. That was part of it. And then the other part of it is maybe a little bit of simple wish fulfillment of Frank being this hero who saves these little girls, who saves this family, um, and just does it. He sacrifices himself. He goes into a berserker rage with an axe, and axe murders these uh, prisoners who are intent to, hurt and torture these helpless children. And so for me, it was both of those. I think a deep emotional connection, a deep empathy that the author builds with Frank, and then just being like, "Yeah, Frank," at the very end. I was like, "You axe murder those people. Do it. Do
Yeah.
it, Frank." So
Yeah.
yeah,
I
that
mean,
was
for me, it was like it's always this question of like I wanted to keep reading. I wanted to know what was going to happen. I knew something bad was
Mm,
going to happen. And it's cool to not try to understand why.
mm,
I really let myself have that kind of thrill of an
yeah,
experience of just like I'm going to keep reading because I want to,
yeah.
because like something that's being told to me makes me want to keep reading. And then the it was a surprise. I knew something bad was going to happen. I didn't think that was going to happen, you know?
Yeah. It's interesting you say that too. I remember that I was like, "Oh, this is a chonker. I'm gonna read this in installments." And I sat down to start reading it and I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna do, 30 minutes and then I need to go do some other stuff." Blew past the 30 minutes. I was bought in.
Yeah.
I was here. I was here
Yeah.
with it. I read the whole thing in one sitting and like lost track of time. So,
Amazing.
yeah. Yeah. But yeah, what I feel like what felt so looking at this from a writer's point of view, um, what what do you think? You've talked about this. I think you said this was one of your favorite stories we've read so far for Story Club. What worked especially well for you?
Yeah, I think it was like the just like the patience
Mm,
and the confidence in the delay of
mm,
the most, I'm sure the Wikipedia summary of this story, you know, the third sentence of that summary starts getting into the big things that happen, but it took so long to get into that. And so I
yeah.
really admired just the assuredness. And this is where it's just much more fun to not
Mm,
think about publishing or selling or anything like that. Because, I mean, who knows? It's like many editors would want to just chop this. And there is a version of the story that's still really compelling that's half the length, you know? And so just the being excited, the writer being excited to sit in these places, and it felt very, you know, it's tricky when thinking about ghosts in the United States and where ghosts are in the United States and like the different mythologies of the US. And New England in some ways, right, is the most haunted in some ways. There's that tradition, like the New England Gothic tradition, and
yeah.
I felt that very at work here. And I appreciated being in a writer's imagination who was so. This person loves being in this imagination. Like the person was like raised on the good book and like probably in New England and kind of has this whole. I think Stephen King has his own like little like consciousness in place, and this writer felt like they had one too,
Mm,
and wasn't worried about what anybody thought. It's like, this is my world, these are my references.
I
Like,
like that.
do you want to hang out with me for an hour, because I'm going to tell you a really cool ghost story, and if you don't want to like start with like Luke, then it's cool, that's
You
fine.
do you,
Like
dude. Yeah.
you can read some other story. So just like I appreciate that, like a story that's just so clearly written by someone who's confident in what they're doing is aspirational to me. I think
Boy.
that was kind of my big thought about, maybe not that any of the stories that we've read in this collection haven't had that, but just that lived in quality
Mm.
um, in the kind of literary universe was inspiring.
I agree. I wonder, so sometimes a new writer is not going to be given as much leeway, as many chances as an established writer. So Russell Kirk wrote this story specifically near the end of his writing career. This is one of his later works. And I'm wondering if he had written this earlier in his career, I think you're right. I think this would have been a third of the length that it is. And it would have started, who knows where it would have started. But it would have been a completely different experience. And I think it's so interesting from a writing point of view to look at trusting yourself, at the confidence that you're talking about, and how this writer has learned to trust himself and trust his voice, because we as readers respond to that. We can see, like you said, we can see his confidence, and that is compelling, because we're like, oh, this guy knows what he's doing. I can trust him.
Yes.
I'm giving Russell Kirk, it took me, 2.5 hours to read this story, which for a short story is not very short.
Right.
But it was gone in an instant because I trusted Russell Kirk. Russell Kirk trusted Russell Kirk. His editor, his publisher, I'm sure they had input, but I mean, this was very confidently told.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I did try to chart it out a little bit.
Ooh, tell me.
Well, just like, and it's too long to go through all the twists and turns of the map of it, but like a really clear way in which this like road trip from the beginning, for driving from LA to New York, if this story starts in LA and ends in New York, like a really early like detour was the first several pages where the story really sets itself up to be kind of a survival horror.
Yes.
Yeah. You start reading this and it's like a Jack London tale or a movie. It's a man on the side of the road who can't get a ride, and he's going to freeze to death.
Because the stakes are survival related.
Yeah.
The stakes are not, oh, I'm worried about my eternal soul, ergo this. The stakes are Frank is cold and Frank's going to die if Frank doesn't get to a house.
Yes.
Like,
yeah, exactly.
And it's so, I don't know if that's necessarily irony or something else, but like, essentially a dead person, the very first stakes in this story being survival stakes. It's like, okay, we know later Frank's already dead. So that wasn't even a thing. That was just to pull us in, you know?
We've talked about this before on this story club, how like, it's always a good sign when dying is not the worst possible, like, and that's exactly it. It's like, if you thought this story was about somebody being too cold on the side of the road and having a slow, agonizing freeze to death overnight, that would be bad. And that would be a scary story, but like, no.
It's like, wait, you guys, just wait.
And I guess I'm just finding myself increasingly excited, interested, curious, welcome to detours,
Tell me more about that. Yeah.
Well, I think just for myself, I think it's twofold. I think one, it was going through that same kind of Hollywood executive track at some level, which I know you have been down too, where you have these editors and executives being like, it has to like be the main story. If you cut anything, partly that, and undoing a few years of that. But also partly, I think my own tastes are kind of traditional, and like, I like a simple story. I like a simple story well told, and I don't necessarily need it to go different places that don't make sense. Like, it doesn't really make sense in some ways. Like the story, I don't have an immediately good answer for you why it doesn't start with like, he was really cold and he showed up to this town hoping to find a warm house. And then we go into the town and there are no warm houses. That's not until page 3 or 4. So
What does happen for you in those first 2 pages then? If that doesn't hit until page 3 or 4, what worked for you in those first 2 pages?
That's a really fun question. That's good. I think that by suggesting the stakes of the story are life and death in a storm, that the sense of weather, right, the ash, snow, immediately, it's like, it doesn't leave us. So I feel like because we spend maybe thinking off the dome here, maybe because we spend a few pages in a literary imagination in which there's like snow and we're cold, this and that the story might be around living or dying in the cold. Like, because we spend a few pages in there, we're still cold. It's like the rest of the story we're inside, but like that cold, you know how it is. It's like it takes a long time to really warm up. And so we're still like cold from that part of the story, which maybe sort of tonally, vibe-wise, makes the rest of the story a lot more effective.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I like that. Well, I think it was Takashi pointed out like how atmospheric this story is.
Yeah.
And it really is. We have essentially one character in this whole story, and the rest of what he's up against is the atmosphere. It's the elements, but is it? You know, so I do appreciate that.
The resistance of memory and guilt. Takashi also says, Frank lives in a perpetual purgatory. When someone lives in sin, according to the Catholic faith, they are further away for the light of God. As long as you repent, you will ascend. Okay, so riddle me this though, because is this his sin to rescue these children and women from the worst things? You know, is that, and that's where I'm just kind of like, my theology is not good enough. Is this like a Catholic thing? Like, if you murder somebody, it doesn't matter. You're going, even if you rescue folks, like even if there's the best reason in the world, because in a lot of ways, he supposedly is someone sent to heaven. You know, he's celibate. He's all these things. He doesn't commit crimes. He doesn't steal. He has actually a highly active moral consciousness. Like he is Catholic in the sense, or if we even take Christianity out of it, he's a person who prescribes to a prescribed moral code.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. One thing stuck out to me about this, and again, I'm not 100% sure what to make of this, but to your point, Frank does everything right. And I think the priest even assures us of this in that passage I read earlier, but something that Frank has not done, and I don't remember where this was. I should have written it down. Frank has not been to confession.
Yeah. And O'Malley is like, you don't even have to see me, man.
Just go to, and Frank specifically, explicitly will not go to, oh gosh, I really want to find where that is. Can you read it to us?
Yeah, it's middle of 66. O'Malley says, if you'd confess, you'd not be haunted. But he seldom went to mass and never to confession. All those church boxes pilfered, his mother and father abandoned, his sister neglected, all the ghastly humbling of himself before policemen, all the horror and shame of prisons. There could be no grace for him now.
So a few thoughts. I do know in my limited understanding of Catholicism that confession is one of the sacraments, and it is necessary for absolution of sin. And it is a problem. It is a problem that Frank is not going to confession. In the mindset of this story, a problem is Frank is not going to confession. But I think, and Takashi says in this latest comment here, Frank's sin was murder. He cannot let go of his wrath. I think that you've got something there, because at the end of this story, and it's implied that this happens again every year. At the end of the story, he is tempted not to go help Allegra. He is tempted, and it says that several times, that he pauses. He doesn't want to open the door for Allegra. He can just get out. There's a skylight symbolically that he can escape through. But he turns and he goes and helps Allegra, and he gives into that wrath every single year. But like you said earlier, we've talked about this in a few of the other stories we've read. Like a trope in horror is the sin and the cost of that sin. In this case, yeah, Frank did a murder. Frank did several murders. That's not okay, right? But Frank would go back and do it again every single time. Now, Frank did the murders. This is where I'm less clear, not being an ordained priest, but I'm not clear if there is justified murder, or if, even if the murder wasn't justified, if Frank went to confession and confessed his sins, if he would be absolved. So
I think maybe yes. I think I mean, that's where it gets into this, like, Russell Kirk is a quote unquote Christian writer
Yeah.
writing an allegory. And that makes me think of last week's story, The New Mother.
Oh, The New Mother. Yes.
Yeah. So if you weren't here last week, we read a very frightening sort of fairy tale type tale called The New Mother about these poor children who were good kids.
Blue Eyes and the Turkey.
Made one little mistake and got punished for all time terribly. And it's like, essentially, maybe what Russell Kirk is suggesting is like, look, it doesn't matter that you save children's lives. Like, it doesn't matter if there was every reason to commit these murders. You didn't go to confession. You will not go to heaven. Period. End of sentence.
Right. So he sees it as more black and white, which fits in with us talking about an allegory.
I don't think I would have that conclusion except for the intro. This is why I'm so like dubious of intros and
because they
attend to them last, you know, because it's like, if I didn't know that, I wouldn't say that, but like, because of the agenda piece. Great comments coming in. Narrative Vault. Thank you for being here, Narrative Vault. Welcome back. I think he was extremely intelligent, questioned religion, and didn't feel he ever fit in. Well, he definitely didn't ever feel fit in. There's no doubt about that. I think both from kind of the author tells us that he never fit in, and he also saw himself as someone who never fit in. And I think his intelligence is also validated in the doctor's letter, where he says like, he's much smarter than he seems. And yeah, Takashi, penitence is necessary for absolution. Remembering my Sunday classes, LOL. Takashi, there's still time to save your mortal soul.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, apparently, but apparently an unlimited amount, right? Is that the moral of the story here? Because he still does this every year.
I think a big part of it is Frank doesn't feel like he deserves to move on. He doesn't feel like he deserves grace. And he's so terrified of that he won't even experiment with it by going to confession just to see, oh, does this absolve me? Because he's already cast himself as he already says, I'm going down. I don't remember where that was, but he talks about like, and, you know, one of the things about purgatory is, you know, it's suited to you and to your sins.
Right.
And boy, is he in, I don't want to say the right place, but he's in a place appropriate to what he's going through. With guilt, with his crimes, be they as they may.
Yeah. What was your experience as a reader of the kind of middle sequence of the story? The first third of the story is he gets to the house.
Yes.
And then kind of the middle is he's in the house. And it's like, it's safe here and I'm going to hang out. What was that like for you?
The middle of the story, I went through phases reading this. The first phase was, oh, wow, this is really like The Reach and or Silent Hill. Second phase was when he gets to the house, he goes inside, and I didn't know what it was going to be. I didn't know what this story was going to be. And so I was like, oh no, he's entering a haunted house. And there's some signs of this being a haunted house. The fact that he's eerily familiar with it. The author does a great job of playing around with some things that we may be familiar with from the horror genre, like, oh, you've been here before, you've always been here, you know, like that kind of thing.
Agreed.
And so I spent the middle of the story thinking haunted house. There's giggling children. I mean, it's almost full of cliches. There's tiny giggling children in the dark. There's movement that's just outside of his peripheral vision. There's all these little things, and he's like, oh, and he doesn't question anything, which is also a classic, like, you know, I'm in a haunted house. Like, was that a sound? Oh, I'm not going to think about that. Time to keep going. And there's just so many things here that, and again, this was published, I think, in 1977. I don't know how established horror was at that time or what had been established with it. but there were some things there that had me as a reader in 2025, saying like, oh, haunted house, Frank, if there's a basement, Frank, don't go in the basement, Frank.
Yeah, I wrote
Like,
that down too.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
this
So
is like, yeah, here we go to the basement.
don't
Yep.
go to the basement, Frank.
I'm so glad you brought up that business of him perceiving other things that other people don't. That
Yes.
because as you said it, I realized that I think that was where my misreading of this story really began. Because
Interesting. Yes.
I read this as like a psychological descent. This is the tale of a person who is crazy, whatever. Like they are having a psychotic break of some
They call him
kind.
Crazy Frank in
They
the
call
story.
him Crazy Frank rather than rather than reliving something that actually happened. I thought that this was like a person on their own going to this like house in an abandoned town and something insane is happening to them because they're not well, right? And I think that's an incorrect reading. But I'm glad you brought that in because I do think that is where that incorrect reading began for me, which was when he starts talking about how he can see stuff that other people can't. I'm trying to find it. I'm not seeing it.
Well,
but yeah, he has that.
That doesn't mean that your reading of it was wrong or incorrect, though. I'm very much of the opinion.
Yeah, sure. Like,
that...
yeah, I'm not on some like I didn't get it necessarily, but like I think it's hard to say. But I do think that your interpretation that this is something that actually happened to him years past and he's reliving it is more convincing, at least from what we've learned in this conversation. But for the modern horror reader mind, maybe,
Yeah.
right, where we do have more tales of psychological collapse, The Shining, right? You go to some place where there's a lot of snow and you like lose your mind.
Yeah.
So him talking about how he saw stuff that other people didn't see and how he had always done that his whole life. I was like, oh, okay. That's what kind of story this is.
I'm curious. I'm looking up real quick. When was The Shining published? Because the movie came out. Oh, The Shining. Okay, this is very interesting. The Shining, the book by Stephen King, was published January 1977, which is
that's
when the story came out. Yeah.
Wow.
Which is probably complete coincidence. And then the movie, the Stanley Kubrick version that Stephen King famously hated, did not come out until I believe 1980. So, but yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, I think that could probably be like if you're listening to this and you're a college student looking for some kind of comparative literature paper to write, write the paper on this story in context of and related to Stephen King's The Shining, and then let us know how it goes. I'm curious.
It's so I really just there was a time when I would be like writing that down and be like, oh man, this is good. Yes, I can totally do this next term.
Well, and like I already like we were saying before, like there's this sense of like, oh, you've always been here, and like that's literally the end. But that's the end of the movie, which wouldn't have come out yet when this story was written. And it's been too long since I've read The Shining to know if that part is in the book or if that was, because there's a huge departure from the book and the movie.
Definitely.
So
yeah. Well, the blizzard being one. I mean, in the movie, it ends in snow, and the book it ends in fire. That's one of the big ones. This would be a logical place to end this conversation, but I want to introduce a larger thought.
Go on.
You and I haven't talked about yet, Sarah. That I would love. That I don't know how much it's going to come into account in these story clubs, but one thing that I want to learn more about is this idea of a modern character in literature, in movies, of like a full psychology versus a character that's just actions happen to them. Because I was thinking about this earlier when you were talking about the nature of this character, that in some ways everything was predetermined. It's almost like there wasn't, which I guess maybe relates to the Catholicism. I don't know. But it almost didn't feel like there were like choices made here in the same way that a contemporary modern protagonist, you know what I mean?
I do. That's an interesting point. And it's interesting. I know that Calvinistic faiths, which is a branch of Protestantism, the Calvinistic side of things is more predestination. You know, you're kind of on rails, you're living out God's plan and you can't deviate from it. So enjoy, lol. And I feel like with this, I do think, oh, that's so interesting because in one sense, Frank doesn't have a choice because he's on rails. He is going through and reliving this story. But at the same time, I think that it's very interesting that he is asked to make a very specific choice on page okay. When he talks about page 80, Frank was too bewildered to grasp altogether where he was, how this might be fit into the pattern of time, which I think is very interesting that you are talking about things being predetermined, the pattern of time. All that mattered was flight. The scheme of his escape remained clear in his mind. And then Allegra knocks on the door and he says, for a brief moment, okay, so that little voice he knew, so Allegra's voice, as if it were part of him, Allegra's voice. For a brief moment, Frank still meant to scramble out the skylight, but the sweet little voice was begging. He stumbled off the chair, upset it, and was at the door in one stride. Is that you, Allegra? Open it, Frank. Please open it. He turned the key and pulled the bolt. And he makes his decision there. He makes it again. When he decides to follow Allegra. So he says, who's down there, Allegra? She says, the bad men. Come on, Frank. Braver than he. The little thing plunged back down the garret stair into the blackness below. Allegra, come back here. Come back now, he bellowed, but she was gone. He would have turned back to the hole in the roof had not Allegra squealed in pain somewhere on the second floor. And that's when he goes into his berserker rage. But I think it's still... I mean, is that a choice? He chose not to escape, but that second time, Allegra screams, he jumps into action. Is that a blind berserker rage, or is that a choice?
I think it's a choice. I think it's clear that it's a choice. I think maybe I just need to go learn and report back because, like, you know, you go back to like Oedipus or Hamlet or anybody else, and it's like, they were still making choices, but it's like, what makes those characters different than, you know, again, you know, if we dug into like literary criticism or all that good stuff, like sometime around 1900, all of a sudden characters started having psychologies, right? And it was more to it than just making choices or not, but there was something about this character that felt from like the classics, like there it was, and maybe that is the allegory showing itself. Like we could feel the allegory a little bit, that in writing this, it was an idea, you know, in some ways for this writer.
Yeah. It's interesting that you bring up Hamlet. Like, I mean, and is Frank a more classic tragic hero? I don't even know. I don't know if that's a discussion we want to get into now, but I think that your distinction between like a modern character and then like a postmodern character and then looking at like a Shakespearean main character where it's less about the internal journey and more about their actions. I think this has a very interesting place, I think, between those two things.
Yeah, it does. It does. Tell all your friends, folks, to join Story Club, because you have the friend that could fill this silence and be like, you're absolutely right. It does exist in between these two places. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for coming. Welcome back. And if you just joined the stream, this is Horror Story Club, where every Thursday, Sarah, Ray, Werner, and I work our way through this collection of short stories, The Dark Descent. We just finished. There's a long, long trail of winding. Next week is a big one, Sarah.
Next week is a big one. Next week, well, for Horror Story Club next Thursday, please do join us. We are reading one of the more famous. We're reading The Actual Call of Cthulhu by H.P. Lovecraft. So we're diving into one of the most famous And I don't even know if 50 years ago it would have been called one of the most famous, but today it is certainly, we have Cthulhu Fever. It is certainly now one of the most famous / infamous horror stories of modern times. So I'm excited to dive into that with you. Gosh, I was gonna say, do you want to like read us the first sentence here? But
I mean, I think we ought.
I think
I would
we
add
ought to.
I would add foundational as well to that list.
Yes,
I think
yes,
not only is this a well-known short story, well, universe of Lovecraft, but it had such influence.
yeah.
And that's why I'm excited, because this is relatively, I just avoided Lovecraft forever.
Oh, I did too.
because
Yep.
I was like, all I heard was just like how insanely racist and terrible he was. And I was like, I just don't even need to read this guy.
Mm.
I hadn't even read a single story by him until this year. And I did have the experience. I was like, oh, this is why everyone reads this guy. So now I am excited to because I've never read this story.
Well, and I'm noticing that the story, which I didn't know, starts off with a quote from Algernon Blackwood, who was sort of the precursor to Lovecraft. I just didn't know that like they were that associated, that he would excerpt his work in the story. So I thought that was interesting too.
I'll read the first sentence of the story proper.
Yes.
Okay, here we go. This is called Cthulhu. The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. Hot.
I mean, that's the thesis statement of cosmic horror, right?
Yeah.
That if we could open our minds and fully understand everything, we would go insane. So yeah, it's merciful that we can't do that.
I'm like scanning my bookshelf for the Haunting of Hill House. It definitely echoes the first sentence. First sentence of Haunting of Hill House kind of gives whatever feeling that's shuddering through me deliciously right now.
It's on my other shelf.
Yes. So let's throw some Discord links in the server. If y'all are new and want to hang with Story Club, we'll put them in the server. Wednesday sci-fi, Thursday horror, and on Friday we write. Sarah and I are writers. A lot of folks on the Discord are also writers. Community is being built.
It's a good time.
Tomorrow we are working our way through some horror Christmas opportunities.
We are. So we invite you to join us tomorrow for our writing session, which I believe is it noon central here?
Yeah.
Yes. Noon central, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. So early birds over in California, please do join us.
And we'll be coming with prompts. We'll be coming with deranged Christmas props to not actually, but maybe pictures and stuff to inspire your Christmas horror story. This should be a good one. I'm just going to put it out there in the universe right now. How cool would it be, Sarah Ray Werner, if someone on the stream tomorrow wrote something that got published? This is a 500-word minimum submission opportunity, everybody. So I'm feeling good.
I'm feeling excited. I've never written this kind of like very, very camp. And maybe we can talk a little bit more tomorrow about camp fiction and about like extremely focused, narrowed in genre fiction. I'll
tell you what. Yeah. You know what, everybody, I will, if you're in the Discord, I will try to source an example tonight.
I could think of a movie that you should watch, and that is Silent Night, Deadly Night, Part 1. If you want to watch an excellent Christmas murder movie.
Silent Night, Deadly Night,
Part 1. And so Part 2 isn't actually a Part 2. Part 2 was a re-release of the first movie, because when the first movie came out, all these moms like rallied against it and got it shut down.
Amazing.
And so they weren't able to like make any money from the first release of the movies. So they're like, okay. And they made Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2, which is just Part 1 with like a new intro and a new some new footage at the end. So I mean, it's the same movie essentially, but enjoy.
Incredible. All right, y'all. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you for doing this. Thank you for being here. And we will see you tomorrow. Bye for now.
Bye.